Hi everyone, it's Rocio from CoachProFlores.com, and today we're going to be talking about September's topic, which is emotional expression versus apathy and dissociation. Learning to feel what you're feeling without losing yourself. I wanted to make this topic this month, mostly because since I talked about feeling safe in July, and then in August I focused on like the idea of praxis and building up your belief system so you know how to act. And so now I want to focus on the emotional expression part of it because we're living in some weird times. We're living in some weird times, and I feels like everything feels like too much. So I wanted to talk about this first, and then I'm like, I can't do just emotions without first talking about like some of the core things that go into why we're even feeling the way we're feeling, right? So yeah, I would like to say stick around to the end of the video. I have an announcement, some book updates for you, so please take a look at that. But we're gonna follow the Be Yourself framework. Sorry, I'm gonna put the camera a little higher. I feel like I'm not all in the frame. Oh no. Hi. Okay, so I have my notes here, and so I'm just following the notes. I'm not editing this video, it's just going all the way through it. Hopefully my kid doesn't wake up and start screaming or anything like that like last time. But let's see. So I'll just give you the little intro that I wrote for the event. But when the world seems unreal, it can be easy to think that the safest way to cope is to just stop feeling anything. And many of us fall into apathy, or we just completely disassociate from the world in order to protect ourselves from what we're feeling. On the other end, some of us fall prey to those really, really strong emotions, and we feel like feeling can lead to a loss of control. And for some people, it does. So what do we do about this? I think that because a lot of people fall into the idea that like, if I feel too much, things are just going to be way too much, so then I should just not feel anything at all, right? Because that's safety. And I think a lot of us, I think if you're a person who's like, I struggle with trying to be myself, and I struggle with, just functioning properly in the world in a way that feels right for me, it's going to feel like we fall into black and white thinking often. So we're like, we're either on that end of the spectrum or we're on this end of the spectrum. But if I'm anywhere in the middle, like that does not feel safe. So it's easier to live in those extremes. What does that look like? So you all know the person who maybe is experiencing maybe too many feelings right now. If you're tuned in, you'll probably have like that one friend who's like constantly talking about what's going on in the world, or who seems to be very, very worried. There are people who have been living in a very, very, very controlled way for several years because the fears and the emotions that are coming up because of everything that's going on in the world have really taken over every other aspect of life. And then there are people who have been coping in ways that are not very healthy. And that this is me relating it to like the world, like all the bad things that are happening in the world, right? Our political landscape, some of the things that are happening just in the wider world. There's war and death and all these horrible things. But then there's also like in general in your personal life, when we're going through difficult times, whether it's difficult times with our family or difficult times in our careers, or we're just, ourselves, when we're not feeling like ourselves and we don't know how to process how we're feeling. And so some of us fall into some really negative patterns. I'm the kind of person who can very easily, I like look for an escape. And so for some people that looks like falling into using drugs or binge eating or behavior that's risky, or sharing too much. I feel like we all have that one person in our life who posts too much on their Facebook. I have been that person, so I understand what that feels like. And because it's just, we haven't always been taught how to express our emotions in a way that's healthy and balanced. And so again, we fall into this end. Then there's the other end where it's just easier to not react. It's easier to either pretend you're not feeling anything, or pretend that nothing affects you, or to just completely dissociate, so you're not even being affected because you're like, I don't watch the news. As soon as a friend is going through stuff, I completely, bow out. Like, I'm not going to be a part of that. I don't want to deal with drama. I don't want to deal with anything that's going on in the world that has any kind of emotional weight to it, which sounds easy. if you're the person living through that, it sounds like that's an easier way to live. But the negative consequences of living in that way are the problem. So obviously, if it feels right and it feels good and you're like, I don't feel bad, and there's no negative consequences, then I understand why somebody would choose that. But usually that can lead to things like, you know, a breakdown in trust in relationships, a breakdown of relationships in general, not having any social ties to your community and to the world around you, not being aware of the things that are affecting you and not having any autonomy over those things. And we're social people. We're social creatures. We need to connect with the world around us, and when we're not connected, that has an effect on our body. It has an effect on our mind. And some of us, that can lead to either pre-existing issues that we might have with our mental health, or can create some of it. For some people, a lot of times when they feel very lonely, set apart from the rest of society, when they're not getting any of that that necessary social support that they need, that's when they might fall deeper into depression, deeper into same kind of like numbing yourself with drugs, or numbing yourself with food, or numbing yourself with things that aren't going to actually help. And again, everything is on like a spectrum. Nothing, everybody falls somewhere in there. And so what we're trying to do is try to get to a place where it's a little more balanced, because you're not going to go your whole life without ever falling into any end of the spectrum, right? Like, we're all going to be a little dramatic, or be like, I can't deal with anything, peace out. Everybody experiences that. And so what does it look like to have a more healthy relationship with your emotions, and to have a relationship with your emotions? A lot of us don't have that, or at least that's how we grew up. And so that's something that I think is really important for us to learn. And I'm sorry if I sniffle. Oh, my son is sick, and I think we're getting sick, and we've been stuck indoors for days, and it's not fun. Okay, so I'm gonna go over the Be Yourself framework, so the different self pillars, to kind of frame out what I'm talking about, and then I'll just make sure that I actually go through all of the notes that I have, and then at the end I'll go over some calls to action for you. Okay, so the first one is self-awareness, and I wanted to show you guys my feelings. It's okay to feel. It's a feelings pillow. So maybe you've seen this online, maybe you haven't, but if it's the first time you've seen it, there are so many different versions of this. I actually just found this on Amazon. It's just like a pillow cover you put on a pillow, but the chart itself, like if you just Google feelings chart, feelings wheel, any of those, you're gonna find like a crazy amount of people who make them. A really good person to follow is oh man, I forgot the name of her thing. Self-Love Rainbow is the name of her. I think that's her name on social media right now. Yes, Self-Love Rainbow. She has awesome ones, great ones. I have all of them, I think. But so I have the pillow, and the reason I have the pillow is because when I wanted my son to have some access to having these conversations in a way that he could access it. Like, he doesn't really care about charts and stuff on the wall yet, and things on my phone. Like, that's not the best way to access it. So that's why we put it on a pillow. Sometimes I'll be like, when he's really freaking out about something, or when he's acting in a way that I'm like, I actually I have no idea what's going on, then I can like tell him, hey, what are you feeling? You know, which one of these faces seems right? So okay, my story with this is, and this is why so I have some neurodivergence in my family and in myself, I guess. I did not understand how do I say this? Like, I didn't understand how to connect like a face to an emotion, or like what emotions were very well. Like, so I'll tell you this. In 6th grade, my school did the health fair, and I would volunteer every year at the health fair. And one of the years, my booth was the feelings. It was like anger management, and they had this little chart that was like a red, yellow, green, like a traffic light stop. But it had so that when you're feeling good, you're in the green, and then when you start to have upset feelings, you're in the yellow, and then when you're angry and lashing out, that's when you're in the red. And it had the little faces, like the smile, and then you know. And I had never considered that there's like a process to how you feel, and that you can change how you feel or affect how you feel. I just was reacting. Like, up until that point, I had never considered that I can change the way that I feel when I'm feeling bad. I just had like this very, and I'm very much like, I either react all the way or I don't react at all. And I remember that's like one of those blow my mind moments, and that was really, I remember it to this day because it mattered. So I obviously, I want my son to have a little bit more more access to emotional language and emotional just knowledge and understanding, so that he doesn't have the same emotional issues that I had growing up. So one of the things that I would like you to look into is just the idea that we can become aware of what we're feeling. I think a lot of people don't know that. They can look back at, be like, I was angry, but sometimes we're acting in a way and we don't even know why we're acting that way. We don't recognize, like, oh, I'm feeling irritated, or I'm feeling tired, or I'm feeling sad, or this is grief. And so we're just kind of reacting to the emotions. Like, the emotions are present. Obviously, your body's still going to do the emotion. It's just that then you're just responding to it, but you're not paying attention to the fact that that's what's happening. You're just kind of dealing with the consequences. A lot of people go through their life, something pisses them off, and then they yell at somebody, they call them this and that, and then obviously the person's mad, and then they're like always constantly dealing with all this like conflict, not recognizing that, like, had they just noticed that when the person said this made them feel this way, which is why they were upset when the person said, like, there's a process of recognizing how you feel, so that you're then able to tackle that emotion and change the way you respond. So response versus reaction. The first step is for you to have an awareness of your feelings. So using these, this is a nice one, but then there's the wheel ones I like, because there's like 6 major emotions, right? There's sad, happy, angry. When we look at those in that kind of big category, and then the wheel kind of helps you kind of break it down into, like, well, okay, you're sad. Is it more like a grief? Like, or is it more disappointment? Like, you're able to break them down into smaller, more precise words, and those precise words help us with then knowing what to do with that feeling. And then some other charts that I will link in the comments, in the caption, are I found one that's for triggers, which would be the different kinds of effects that you're having because of your emotions. And then there's responses. I found a really cool one that has like fight. You've heard of sorry, talking too fast. Fight or flight. And we know now that it's more like fight or flight or freeze or fawn. And then I saw the one I had also said, I forgot the last word. There was 5. It was really cool because I was like, oh, yeah, that does make sense. I don't know how much that one's in line with what's actually being taught as in like psychology, but usually people talk about those, and I think in general it's just a really good way for you to kind of recognize, like, oh, this happened, I felt this way, so then I did this thing, and that's what I typically do. Next time that it happens, maybe I'll be aware of it and I'll pause. Some questions to ask you. Okay, what emotions have I silenced or numbed? And where in my life do I shut down instead of speaking up? And because I'm focusing a lot on, like, it's one thing to overexpress. When we overexpress, obviously usually it's the world telling us that we've overexpressed. They're telling us that we were too angry, or too loud, or too dramatic, or you cried too much, or you whined too much, or like those kind of words. With shutting down, it can be a little bit harder because it just presents as I don't care, or I don't even know what that, like, you're not even, a lot of people like this, just avoid completely, right? And so that's a little bit harder for it to be noticed because somebody has to notice it, and it's easy not to notice when nothing's happening. Talking too much, I swear. I only talk to my kid most of the time, so my voice gets all messed up when I talk with my regular voice. And so let me see. So one thing you can do is just kind of again, using some of these tools to just give words to the way that what you're experiencing in the moment. And then I also want to break down the fact that when we say the word feelings, there's 2 different things to consider. So there's feelings as in emotions, and then feelings as in like sensations, because there's a difference between feeling happy and tired. Happy's an emotion, right? You could be tired and happy, you could be tired and not happy. Tired is more like a physical experience, which to some people can be, I feel drowsy, or I'm having a hard time concentrating, or my body's just feeling really like heavy. Some people get hyper when they're really tired, and then they start, like, again, lack of focus can be a big one. And so they start like acting a little bit more erratic. Either way, knowing how to recognize those physical sensations, like I'm hungry, I'm feeling cold, hot. I mean, it's so hard to think of. I should have written it down because it's hard to think off the cuff. But yeah, recognizing those two different things. Like, you've seen the commercial for Snickers where they give you a Snickers, like, hey, you're hungry and that's why you're acting all angry. And the word hangry, our emotions and our sensations are very much aligned. Sometimes when we feel sad, some people feel it in their like in their chest. It's like, oh, I feel like my chest is full. Some people feel like a deep gut kind of feeling. Other people, it is that more like a loss of energy. Our bodies, even our minds, are physical and are interconnected in many, many ways, and you can study all that, or you could just recognize that there's something to notice. So right now in the self-awareness, it's just pay attention. Just pay attention and start to find a way to state what that is. And so if that could be just kind of throughout the day, maybe putting, or when you notice it, even if it's after the fact, and you have to kind of be like, okay, well, something was going on there, let me just notice it. Pay attention to when you notice that feeling of like, oh, something felt wrong, and so I couldn't say the thing I wanted to say. I couldn't express how I felt. Like, maybe I felt it, but I couldn't express it. And start paying attention to some of those patterns. And then the next part is, let me drink some water. So easy for me to get overexcited, and then I don't breathe, and then I get anxious. Let me close this because it's my glasses are getting super glary. Okay. And my kitty jumps into the tables because he's right there that's why I didn't close the window. Okay. Self-acceptance. So there's two parts of this. I want to go to self-acceptance as in like acceptance of yourself, and then acceptance of the actual emotion. So I want to just say just straight up, what you're feeling is what you're feeling. Without you wanting to feel it or not wanting to feel it, or liking it or not liking it, or noticing it and wanting to change it, or thinking it shouldn't be that way. Regardless, it is what it is. That doesn't mean it can't change. It doesn't mean that you have to like that. It doesn't mean that you have to agree with the way it is. But you can't do anything around that until you recognize that that is what it is. Acceptance is very hard. It's a very hard concept to grasp. And honestly, I think if you work really hard at this step, it makes everything else easier. Like, you can't do anything unless you're aware of it, right? Because obviously if you're not aware of something, you're not even going to be trying to make a change in your life. But then you can't change that thing you became aware of until you accept that that's what's happening. And so I'm telling you right here, whatever it is you're feeling, whatever response you're having, whatever it is that comes up in whatever kind of situation, that's just what it is in that moment. So hold on to that concept. Before you try to move away from that concept, you need to be able to hold on to that. And then there's the self-acceptance as in yourself, where you are a human being. If you're watching this video, you're a human being. Unless it's your cat, but even if it's your cat, they might have emotions. I don't know. I don't know enough about animals. But you're allowed to have feelings, and whatever feelings you're having, that's okay. Maybe other people are going to say to you, or you think that they will, like you have this belief that like it's not okay to feel a certain way, or that feeling a certain way makes you a bad person, or it makes you a weak person, or it makes you like, whatever judgment is placed on that emotion, let's step that aside for a moment and let's focus on the fact that either way, that's what you're feeling. And because you're a human being, you're allowed to feel that. That's what you're feeling. That doesn't mean you then connect like actions or behavior. So like, just because you feel mad doesn't mean you get to hit somebody, right? The fact that somebody says like you're allowed to feel mad about it, whether or not it made sense to feel mad is a different conversation. Whether or not the way you responded to being mad, that's a different conversation. Whether or not you feel like you should or shouldn't feel mad, that's a different conversation. You feel mad, That's what you need to sit with. And that part is really hard for some reason. I mean, I wish I could explain why it's hard, because it's something I've struggled with. And so it wasn't until I was able to really be like, okay, so this is what it is, that I was able to, like, without the judgment, without the trying to change it, without trying to rationalize it, without trying to justify, without trying to put all this other effort into it, just sitting with what it is and the fact that that is what it is, and that's okay. Then you can move on to some of the other steps that you're wanting to take, or that you may not even want to take if you haven't gave yourself enough time to just sit with what it is. And so you can't change what you won't accept, and understanding comes from acknowledgement. So in order for you to understand and really be able to be like, okay, I had this emotion when I saw this post because that made me think about this thing that happened with this person, and then this person reacted in this way, therefore I feel like if I now don't respond in this way, like, in order for you to understand what's happening, or where it's coming from, or where it originated, or what is going to affect it further, etc., you need to understand it. And so you need to acknowledge it in order to understand it. It's kind of like saying, there's a scene in Gilmore Girls where a little boy asks for fries with his burger, and then the other kid says, at Luke's, and he says, "Ooh, me too. I want fries too. I want that too." And he's like, "Wait, on the side of what?" It's like, "What do you mean?" And it's like, he's like, they're going off like, "Well, you can't order fries if you didn't order. You can't order fries as a side if you didn't order the main meal." And that's kind of what I mean with this, where like you can't do any of the side stuff if you don't know what you're talking about in the middle. Does that make sense? You need to have like a meal to know what your sides are. Okay, let's talk about. Okay, so I think a big part of why this is hard is that we've been kind of taught that things should be a certain way. And that is hard because every culture does it differently. Every society kind of like will, some people are taught that they shouldn't show certain emotions. Some people are taught that not showing emotions is a bad thing. Like, there's different beliefs between different kinds of emotions for different people, for different groups. And so it's hard to come to this idea that you're acknowledging it and then accepting it, because acceptance for a lot of people just means that you agree with it. It means that you accept it, like it's a good thing. But that's not what the term means. And that's not what the term means in this context. So it's sometimes we just have to come to terms and accept that words don't always mean what we think they mean. They mean what they do mean. And you need to understand how you're understanding that word versus how another person's understanding that word, so that you're able to then, the same with emotions, but with words. But okay, so once you understand that what you're experiencing is what you're experiencing, I like to go with the next pillar, which is self-love, because I think that the biggest part of why we struggle with emotions is because we have a lot of judgment, a lot of negative beliefs around emotions, even good emotions or bad emotions. Like some cultures have beliefs around like you can't be too happy because then that could mean that this could happen. Like, I don't want to go into specific details because like I said, every culture is different, and but there's social conditioning that we experience. And so because we have that at the back end of our mind, regardless of what is actually happening or whether or not there's a truth or not, that kind of kicks in sometimes before you're able to process what you're feeling and then make a decision about how you want to go forward. Because those things are there, and there isn't a self-love deep core belief, that's gonna win, right? If you believe that let me explain that. Let's see. If you believe that you being happy when somebody else is sad makes you a bad person, then you're not going to want to feel happy, because that is competing with an extremely, extremely deep and strong belief system. So even if you know you're not doing a bad thing, the other person is telling you like, I'm so glad that you're happy, even if they're sad. Even if people are telling you that there's nothing wrong with being happy during this moment, you're doing a good thing, you haven't done a bad, like they could tell you a million things that say like there's nothing wrong with you feeling happy in this moment, because your deep core belief is of judgment that says that you feeling happy when somebody else is sad equals you being a bad person, that is going to beat out any happy feelings. And you're going to respond either by playing down the way you're feeling, or by trying to hide it, or by self-sabotage. This is where, like, on TV, this is a big one where, like, people get happy and then they start doing something bad, and they use that term self-sabotage a lot on TV. It happens in real life, maybe not in those dramatic ways that the TV show. Maybe you're not going to go blow up your whole family just because things are going good for once. Like, obviously we're not on TV, but in real life those things do happen. And so if you change your core belief to that of self-love, meaning that I am a person, a human being, innately worthy, innately capable of being loved, worthy of love, and fully loved, and I love myself fully, regardless of whether or not I do good things or bad things, or if I am seen as a good person or as a bad person, or if I am perceived in ways that do not align with what I align with, or even if those things are true. Even if I am the worst person in the entire world, I still love myself at a deep core because I am worthy of being loved. Then those social conditioning thoughts, those judgments, those things that you're being taught, even if they're strong, this thought is stronger. So at the end of the day, you're able to rationalize. You're able to, like, fight back to, like, wait, no, I don't have to believe this belief. I talk a lot about how, like, that's not a self-core belief that I had growing up. Or I think about 4 or 5 years ago was the first time that I had a thought that was like, oh, like, wait, I think I like myself. Like, it's the first time that I didn't have a really pure, deep, like, I had a lot of self-hatred growing up, and I my core beliefs were really around the idea that, like, I am evil. I hate myself. I'm a bad person. And because I believe those things, it didn't matter how many self-esteem classes and courses I took, or books that I read about confidence, or how to be better at this or that. It didn't matter, because as long as I believe that deep down, I'm fighting against something that just completely goes against anything else you're telling me. Like, I can't believe the thing you're telling me. And so that's why I'm telling you, you need to get to the point where you're focusing on this. Even if that means that you spend significant amount of time just on this step. And it seems weird, right? It seems like, okay, well, let's say you're somebody who deals with, like, anger. And so, like, you're having issues with anger, it's creating conflict in your life, your people are talking to you about taking, like, anger management courses, maybe the courts are telling you that you have to take anger management courses, and that feels very much unaligned with this idea that you're an innately worthy of love person, because you're doing a thing that people see as bad. And so you're like, but I'm bad. And so you might not connect how you seeing yourself as bad leads to you acting in a way that's bad. At least, the way that people perceive it. Because when you believe that you're not worthy of being loved, then if you're not worthy of being loved, other people could also be unworthy of being loved. And then there's a hierarchy to who is and who isn't worthy of being loved. And now all humans come at a different stratum, and it affects all these other systems, where now you can see how it's okay for one person to do a bad thing because they're just bad people, versus another person does good things just because they're a good person, but you're not, right? So there's all these beliefs that kind of play into each other. So you have to focus on that core belief. I am innately worthy of love. Just because you're a person, just because you're born, just because you're a creature, just because you're a human being, like, you just are. And it's hard. So I'm not going to pretend it's not hard. And so again, this goes into, like, beliefs about if you believe that an emotion is bad, it's the same kind of thing, where you believe that crying is a bad thing. Like, men are told don't cry because that's not a thing men do, right? Or women are told not to be dramatic because that's a bad thing. We're told that we need to act happy at certain things, whether or not we feel it or not. We're told that recently in my life, we've had several deaths throughout the last couple months, and at the funeral for one, I was told, like, oh no, don't cry. Like, and I had spent, this is where I'm so glad that I'm at a different point in my life now, because that's the message that I've gotten in the past, and that's the message I would have lived with. And I, for a long time throughout the weeks, especially when I was doing other stuff, because I was doing planning funerals and stuff, I had that, like, don't cry, don't cry, like, you're not allowed to cry right now, you're not allowed to feel this right now. And I had to constantly fight myself, like, no, I have to feel what I'm feeling. And if I feel like crying, it means that I need to cry. It means that this is what I'm feeling, and this is part of the process. And so I cried, and I didn't care that the person told me, and I know that they didn't mean bad. It's just that that's what they believe, that's what they've been told. Like, you're not supposed to cry, you're not supposed to feel, you're not supposed to give in to these emotions because it makes you weak, or it makes you, there's something wrong with it, and there isn't. That's back to that, like, whatever it is you feel, that's just what you're feeling, right? There isn't a moral judgment on that feeling. Like, you're aware of the fact that I'm feeling sad. Now you're aware of the fact that you need to accept it. So you're just like, yep, I am feeling sad. That's what it is. The self-love part comes in with, like, there's nothing wrong with feeling sad. Sad is just an emotion. All emotions are just, if you want to go into, like, the more science-y and, like, bare of feelings feeling part of, like, it's a chemical reaction that your brain is taking part in, that is reacting to a physical condition that is happening in your physical reality. Like, if somebody dies, there are physical, biological things that go on in the body because of the way that we've evolved to be humans and how we interact with other humans. And so even if you don't want to put, like, a moral, religious, or higher being kind of belief around it, there is nothing wrong with feeling whatever it is you're feeling. Whether you're feeling anger, sadness, a lot of these are seen as negative. And then on the opposite, and on emotion, like, on a cultural, like, sorry, deep breath, don't talk so fast. So I come from I'm Hispanic, so obviously my culture is slightly different than American culture, right? And so a lot of ethnic cultures, they see some of those positive emotions as bad as well. Not all the time, and not every culture, not every is in every moment. But, like, let's say that something bad is happening with somebody and you're feeling good, there is almost like an expectation that you should, don't feel what you're feeling, because that has a meaning beyond what you're feeling. And you need to step aside from that, because that's not true. It's not objectively true. It can be true. Maybe there has been patterns where it's like somebody acting happy when somebody is sad is purposeful. That can be a thing, but that's not something that you know whether or not that's a thing unless you first accept that that's what you're feeling. You become aware that that's what you're feeling, and you understand that just because you're feeling it, that's not the reason. I'm sorry, guys. So usually when we're thinking of, like, something and what it like, that judgment idea, that usually the word that people use is called labeling. So when we label an emotion, so we're saying, I'm feeling this and it is good or it is bad. That's labeling that. And so if you ever see people talk about that, that's kind of what that refers to. And so what stories are you telling yourself about the way you're feeling and why you should or shouldn't feel that way? And a lot of this does come down to how we were raised. So I have the idea of, like, your inner child and reparenting yourself, because some of us were taught, like, and I grew up hearing a lot of this stuff. I grew up hearing the very patriarchal, very genderized versions of this, where, like, as a woman, I was told I was dramatic a lot. I was told that I needed to calm down. I needed to not, basically, you're being told, like, you're too emotional and that's a bad thing. And then I saw, because I have a brother, I saw the opposite, and we're like, if you cry, it's because you're gay, or it's because you're weak. And there's, like, you're told that, and, like, I hear it now with a child, being around people with different beliefs than me, who will say those things when they see my kid cry. So I have to actively kind of tell him, like, it's okay to cry. Like, if that's how you're feeling, that's okay. And then have to stop myself from saying things that could make him believe that it's bad to cry or to feel whatever he feels, because it's so easy. Like, my kid already, when he feels pain, sometimes he'll hide. He'll go away, mom. And so I have to assess kind of what I've already taught him or what he's already learned, and then kind of what I need to change or not change to kind of help him so that he is able to process how he feels throughout his life. without constantly having to fight that voice that he learned from me. And so, because I've had to constantly fight that voice that I learned from my parents and the people around me in my life. And so that is something that takes time. This step is obviously not going to take you're not going to be like, oh, wait, Rocio said that it's okay to cry, so I'm just going to be okay to cry. It took me years. I was in therapy for almost 10 years. I didn't cry, like a full out cry. Like, there were many, many times from the first day I went to therapy, like, there were things and topics that the moment I tried to talk about them, like, I welled up. Like, they were very strong topics, but I would shut it down. And it wasn't until, I want to say, like 4 years ago, so like a year before I got pregnant, I had my son, that that was actively what we were working on in therapy, where she basically was like, you're going to cry. Like, I needed to work on allowing myself to get past that, just like welling up and shutting it down and just crying, letting it go and just feeling what I was feeling, and that letting that be the whole thing, like not talking it out, not trying to like understand it, not trying to work through like what led to it or what brought, no, just do it. And to let yourself do it in front of another person, and to feel safe doing it, and to be okay with what happened. Like, that what took me such a long time. And it was hard and scary, and you would think that it's not, especially like if a person talks about crying because a dog died in a movie, that seemed like significantly more like socially acceptable, at least in our society, than crying because of a horrible thing that happened to you as a child. And so there's different levels to it, where like some emotions are seen okay in some situations, some emotions are not okay in some situations, and it's gonna take time. So be okay with the fact that you get frustrated because it's not happening right away. That's also part of the process, and it's okay for you to feel that way. Okay, so then we're gonna walk over to self-care. So the reason I put self-care here is because before, the next step is self-direction, where like now we take action to kind of maybe make changes or to address the things that we're feeling. I want to focus on self-care, because I think a lot of us push towards wanting to change what we're feeling right off the bat before we take care of ourselves through that feeling. And so I have, if you've never heard the term somatic therapy or somatic exercises, I don't know how to explain that. There's a term psychosomatic, which basically means that like things in your mind, so things we associate as not physical, create physical responses, right? So like you feel, so for me, for example, if I feel anxious, I feel nauseous. So it creates a physical feeling that's separate than an emotion, right? People feel nauseous for other reasons. And so that's where the term somatic comes from. And then there is an entire network of like, these days it's a significantly more popular and more accepted form of therapeutic exercises that rely on somatic, I can't remember if the word is somatic therapy or what the term is, but either way, basically you're going to learn how to tackle the physical parts that are the responses to the emotional and mental parts, so that you're able to express those emotions in a way that helps you process them without falling into that dissociation or expressing them in a negative way. So for sad, I have a lot of the things are for like sad and emotional, because let me drink water. Okay, most of us, when we think about processing emotions, we're thinking of negative emotions. I think a lot of us feel happy and know how to feel happy and are able to express happy, and we see so many expressions of that in our world. We see on TV and music and the dancing. Like, most of the time when people have emotional expression as something that's okay to express, it's happy. And so when we think of sadness and anger and anxiety and what else is there? Boredom, embarrassment, surprise. We have a harder time with those because they're considered negative, and so because they're negative, we are told that we can't express them. We're not then told how to express them in a proper way. We're just told basically don't have them, which is not realistic. And so this is where some safe somatic exercises can come into play. So movement, my therapist had me do like She had me like stand in front of like on the floor and kind of like, oh, like kind of dance and move my whole body around. Which, let me just tell you, that's not what a thing I could do a year ago. I since I've had my kid, I've become so much better at being physically okay with my body, because before I was like this all the time. Tell anybody in my life, like, so many social situations where I literally just kind of sat there. I couldn't physically, like, I'm like tight. I'd be sore after a social engagement because I was holding my body tight so I wouldn't express anything. That's how bad it was. And so me being able to like move freely and just express myself, like, that's been so helpful for me. It's something that works really well for people who have PTSD, people who have other mental health issues. And in today's world where there's like, you gotta understand that it's not normal for us to get horrible news every hour. We should not be getting notified of every person that dies in the world, and of every war and every conflict and every horrible financial situation and every, like, it's not normal. It's common, but it's not normal. And it has an effect. Our bodies understand something's happening. This isn't normal. This isn't okay. We're not supposed to experience death. If you think about, like, historically, right, you've experienced death around the people in your family within the context of the world that you're living nearby. And now we experience it constantly for every single person in our city, in our state, in our country, in our world. Same goes with like all the other things that come up in our world where we're like told, hey, the economy's going to crash. Oh, and then this, you're going to get bombed, and then there's going to be a shooting, and there's going to be all these things. And it's a lot for our bodies to process, because we're having to deal with like what's real and urgent for my life right now. What is like a possibility that I need to think about in the future? What is not something I need to put attention to? What is something that I feel bad if I don't pay attention to? This past week we had another major shooting, and I felt horrible, because my first thought was like, well, when I saw the alert, I was like, oh no. I thought right off the bat it's going to be another one of these huge ones where like tens of people die, right? And then I saw it was only 2 kids, and that was the first alert I got, and my reaction was like, oh, I wonder why this is in the news. Like, I was like confused, because normally, at this point, we only see things on the news if it's like a huge, like, amount of people, and that's sad, and it's horrible, and I felt really bad, because it's like, it doesn't matter if it's one person or if it's not even a death, because can you even imagine what that experience is like for the people who are living through it? But again, it's one of those things where like we've become so overly, like, people talk about desensitization, which means like we're no longer feeling things because we've been so exposed to it. And so in order to get desensitized, you had to get overly sensitized first, right? So like it had to come up in a way, like the first time you feel something that's really negative, like a bad experience, it's going to have a negative effect, right? But if it happens a lot and your body gets overwhelmed with those emotions, because it's like the first few times that there were those really big shootings in this country, and we, like, it was a national tragedy, right? It hit everyone because it broke our core belief in safety, right? But then it happened so many times that it's like we overfelt it, and now it's like the only way to deal with it is to just not deal with it. That's when you get desensitized. Like, it just happens. This is a weekly thing. And that's back to, like, we can't break down. Like, we understand that it is not realistic to break down. Like, you can't fall to the ground crying and stop working and stop living every single time a news article says something that's horrible, even if it is truly horrible. And for the person who's most dearly closely related to it, is they're doing that. You can't do that 20 times a day. You can't live that way. But checking out and going to the other side where you're like, it just doesn't even matter. This is an issue. It's not something I even want to think about. I'm just going to ignore it every single time because I can't deal with it, and I can't deal with it in the way that makes sense for my body. Therefore, I'm not going to deal with it at all. And that's not healthy either, because that adds up in your body as well. Because now, what happens when something is closer to home? And you've kind of trained your body to not have a reaction. Well, then that has other issues that then come up, and it becomes this really negative cycle overall. And so, having physical ways to kind of respond to just this daily barrage we're having. Whether it's I'll link this in the resources for the month, but resources on how to move your body to, in a sense, kind of think about like kind of like shaking out the gases, like like if a bottle got shaken and you're trying to like just let out a little bit of that, release it so that you're not under pressure all the time, to help you get through the next time, whether it's shaking it out or dancing or people talk about going for a walk, and it seems so irrational to an angry person. I'll tell you this, as a person who struggled with those really strong feelings of anger and who's had to learn about that, like when somebody tells you to just take a walk or to count to 10, it sounds like the most ridiculous thing in the world, because you're like, how the hell is that going to make me not feel bad? Like, how am I supposed to not feel angry just because of that? And yet it's very, very effective. Taking a deep breath, very effective. Giving yourself access to being able to feel your emotions in a safe environment fully, so like crying in the shower, crying in your car, yelling in a safe environment where people know you're not yelling at them and you're not disrupting anything and scaring anyone. And then there's like more physical things like punching a pillow, throwing something and screaming into a pillow, little more things where you're again getting those emotions out. There's art therapy, music therapy. One second. Somatic therapy. There's when it comes to this area, there is a lot that can be done to kind of stay on top of how you're feeling and express those things in a way that doesn't become, I don't want to say out of control, but where it feels out of control for you. In 2020, when all this stuff was going on with the world, I was having a really hard time because, again, the world shut down, right? But then also with a lot of the stuff was going on, I was going through my own like reckoning of my beliefs and my experiences that I had, and so many things were happening. And then Aliento, which is a program out of Arizona, started doing these art therapies and group therapies online. They're in another state. I never would have had access to them if it was in person, but because they went online for everything else, I was able to join. And we, with a community of other people who have who are in a similar social position as I am, we were able to share some of the stuff we were going through. We were able to do exercises that let me put to the physical, the things that were happening inside. And I remember that made such a huge, like, it was so impactful. I also did music therapy. So right around that time, I'm telling you, where I finally cried with my therapist, I was doing music therapy. And so I genuinely believe that made a big difference, because it opened up. So there's like neuro stuff that has to do with it. I don't want to go into detail. This isn't my area of expertise, but the way it's explained to me is that, like, when you do the exercises in a certain way, like, there's changes that happen in your brain, like physical changes, and that allows those other changes in therapy to become more effective, because now your brain is able to do that. And so I think it made a huge difference, so I highly recommend it. And then so 2 more points under self-care would be, 1, I think that you also have to just remember that coming back to actual self-care. Are you drinking enough water? Are you eating enough food? Are you sleeping enough? Are you taking deep breaths and actually taking time to like rest and recover? Slow down when you're like going too hard. Are you getting physical activity when you're not moving enough? Are you getting, when it comes to eating, maybe not overeating things that are going to have a negative effect? So like me, it's very easy for me to react to things by wanting to eat sugar, and so then I have like a crazy amount of sugar at one moment. And this isn't a diet thing, it's more of a physical, like, if you're gonna have a sugar spike, you're gonna have a sugar crash. That's gonna have an effect on you later, and so you have to pay attention to those things. Are you able to take a shower often, even if you can't do it daily? But if you're going through a difficult time and you're having to go, like, making sure you get it in there, or even cleansing yourself in general. Are you able to take care of other hygiene issues? Are you able to those really physical self-care things that people don't talk us, they're not fancy. It's not taking a bubble bath and getting a pedicure, but it is. Some of them are like, cut your nails. If they're too long, if you're gonna cut yourself, or you're not taking care of them and they're getting gross, like, that's a very active and physical self-care item that will make a difference in your life, and which then so when you're angry, when you're hungry, that can lead to being angry and irritated and all these other negative emotions that you struggle with, right? If you are eating too much sugar, you might be acting crazy, hyper, and maybe making bad decisions in other ways. If you are not sleeping, that's gonna mess with all sorts of things in your life. If you are, obviously there's times in life where you can't control these things. Being a new mom, you're not gonna be able to sleep the way you should be able to sleep. If you just had an accident and you're bedbound, like, you're not gonna be able to do certain activities. But whatever you can get in to try to create a balance in your life where you're getting some of it in at all times, it makes a difference in how you physically feel, which then affects how you emotionally feel. And then I have on here create an emotional first aid kit, and that looks different for everybody. But I'm gonna say that that's more for self-direction, where, okay, you want to change your feelings, or you don't like a way that you've been reacting to certain things, or you recognize a pattern that is showing up in more than one place in your life. This is where now you have to take actions that are directed towards where you want to be. I'm going to recommend therapy. So basic talk therapy, and then from there, whatever it is that your body or mind needs. So like I'm actually diagnosed with certain things, and therefore when I've done therapy with therapists that are specifically, we're going into certain things, right? So, and I got recommended to do like ERP and I forgot the word for the EM. My phone just rang, I'm sorry. EMDR, and there's different therapies that you could do for different, like if you have PTSD or anxiety or depression, or like I have OCD and things like that. Then there's therapies that are more like therapeutic modalities that are not necessarily tackling like some of them do specifically focus on one issue, but like, for example, music therapy, art therapy. If you go with somebody who's actually licensed in those, like, it's a real therapy. I do see a lot of people who are in like the self help world sharing things, but it's one thing to share like a art therapy exercise or a music therapy exercise. It's another thing to be a music therapist. So careful with that. But yeah, there's different kinds of therapy like CBT and DBT, and there's a lot of terms, different kinds of therapeutic exercises. And then there's things that people call therapeutic, which they're not therapy, not in the terms of like having some certain kind of treatment, but people find certain things that they do like helpful and therapeutic. And then there's therapies, like you could go have therapy with a horse. This is something that they usually offer during grief therapy and grief counseling, which is really cool. They offer it to kids a lot. That's really cool. I've never done it, but it's just different, I don't know what the term would be, not modalities, but just different things that are out there for you to explore. I think therapy makes a big difference because you're starting off with the base of you're going to be tackling patterns in your life. And so you should be working with somebody who understands that very well. And then from there, you can go towards maybe things that are a little bit less specifically doctor based, if that makes sense. So like coaching, which is what I do, or peer support, which is what I do. Those are more like things that you do on top of the therapy, but they shouldn't replace therapy. Coaching can be very helpful for, like, let's say you already understand the root causes of the things you're going through, and then coaching is more so somebody who's going to help direct some of the actions that you want to take. Then there's just in general, creating a support system is really important. So getting back to connecting with people, which is November's topic, I believe. But I'm getting another call, but I don't want to stop the video, so I'm almost done. Okay. Connecting with people so that you're able to, whether that's through like a group therapy, which is a little more formal, or just other groups, or in the people that are already in your life, or finding new friends, or finding new people to connect with. Sharing makes a big difference with learning your emotions and being able to, how do I say this? Well, you're processing your emotions. And so it's different than a therapist, because a therapist is there to listen to you for the purpose of the issue that you're having, and then sharing with just other people in general, it requires you to give and take, and that give and take can be helpful because sometimes you don't know what you're thinking until you hear somebody else say something and you're like, hey, maybe I'm experiencing that. And so, and also the giving part of you being the person that listens to them, it helps you. It's helpful. We're very social creatures, whether or not we like it. So under here, so I'll explain. Peer support specifically deals with support with somebody who has had the same experience, so they're a peer to you. Again, it's a very specific type of help, and that again would require you to understand some of what you're going through. So like if you're somebody who's gone through domestic abuse, and you talk to somebody who's also gone through that process, or somebody who's gone through addiction, you're going to talk to somebody who's also gone through addiction, because then they understand the process and they are able to speak to the same experiences. Journaling and other things that are like a daily habit can be really helpful, like doing daily check-ins, doing like CBT, where you're going over like your patterns, like cognitive behavioral therapy, which is like your thoughts, your emotions, and your behavior. Sorry, I don't know why that tried to leave my brain. And then with that you can work through focusing on how to change negative patterns that you notice. So like if you're a person who's falling into harmful actions that are affecting your life in a negative way, like maybe drugs, or hey, there could be things like just shopping too much, or gambling, or there's anything in excess and that hurts your life can be a bad thing, even if the thing itself is not a bad thing. Over exercising can be bad. Over dieting can be bad, right? Like, so anything that's just not serving your life in a positive way, then you decide, okay, these are things that I want to tackle. I'm going to go and I'm going to tackle them in this way. You first have to get through all these other things in order for it to have like a result. That's why I go to direction at the end, because a lot of times what happens is people want to say, I don't want to feel angry anymore, and so I'm just going to pretend that I'm happy, and that creates all sorts of other issues in your life. And then that's okay. So for me, I'm a person who many years I was just like, I'm not gonna feel certain negative emotions, or I'm not gonna express them. So my response was to kind of basically put on this face of like, for everything. And so nobody ever got to know the real me. Like, I know that there's people that I've known for such a long time that I've never connected with, because I never broke through that barrier, because I was just not myself. And to this day, now that I feel like I'm much better at it, I struggle with it. If you watch some of my earlier videos, I have a hard time making facial expressions that match. I have a hard time even just being in camera. And so you don't want to create bigger issues for yourself. So that's why I'm trying to get you to like understand, like if you work through some of the more difficult emotional things, then you can work through makes it easy for when somebody says, hey, you should try going for a walk. I think that can help you. Now you accept that as a tool that can be used during certain situations, and that will help you during those situations because you understand the pattern of what led to it, and etc. Okay. Being yourself and being yourself in the world. I want to talk to you about the two concepts: emotional honesty as resistance, and radical honesty in general. And so there's this idea that like you make a decision, you're just going to be honest, good or bad, whether or not you see it in a good or bad way, whether or not other people are going to see it in a good or bad way. And it's almost, again, it's like a commitment that you do to yourself, that you say, I'm going to decide that this is how I'm going to be. So if I feel sad, I'm going to say I'm sad. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to pretend. I'm not going to downplay it. I'm also not going to qualify it. I'm not going to say that it's good or it's a bad thing that I'm feeling this way, and I'm not going to justify it to somebody who tells me it's good or bad. It's just what I am. The reason it's a play towards resistance is because we live in a world that doesn't tell us that's okay. We live in a world where you putting on the right face or you pretending that things are not what they are is rewarded, and often it's the only way you can kind of move up the ladder. At a job, you have to act a certain way. You can't show your emotions in this way. You'll be seen as proper and nice if you you don't show your emotions as a wife or as a mother. You're seen as more professional in workplace if you don't show your emotions. You're seen as more like, there's all these like there's a lot of social constructs, and we understand. I mean, hopefully you understand if we got to this point, but these things aren't healthy, not in general, and they're not helpful in the long run. And look at where we are in the world. Like, we are, so much of the social issues going on in the world is because we've been taught some really messed up things, and we have a whole new couple generations now that are being taught there's another way of thinking, and now we're clashing, and it's creating, like, people are fighting back now against it, and like, ugh, if we could just be human, it'd be nice, right? And so again, it's a commitment to yourself that you're going to be radically honest, good or bad. That's the way to say it to yourself. Like, if I feel it, I feel it, and that's what's going on, and I'm going to be honest about it, and I'm going to allow it to fester if somebody doesn't like it. And maybe me having been honest in the way I felt 10 years down the line might make a difference in that person's life. And that's my experience. My mother-in-law was a very expressive person, and she was just happy when she was happy, and she was excited when she was excited, and she was just really able to just, like, be. I couldn't, not back then. And I admired it, but I did not want to be like that. At that point, I was trying so hard not to be like that. I was like, I cannot be that way, because I understood how some people saw her, how some people judged her. I recognized where some people were mean to her on purpose because they're like, oh, she's too much of this, right? And I was like, I don't want to be that. I want to be the opposite. I want to be not seen in any way, shape, or form. I want to be controlled at all times. And I see people who were that way, and they don't look happy. And in the end, it didn't make me happy. And I was able to look back at her and how she was and use that more as a better guide for me in the long run. And had she not allowed herself to be that way, I wouldn't have seen that as an option. And so maybe I would have gotten to that controlled state and been like, well, I'm still unhappy here, but I got here and there's no other option, so I might as well stay here because it's worse elsewhere, right? But when you're the example to the world that there is something better, even if it sucks sometimes, it's worth it, because it has an impact, and it has an impact on the culture, and things have changed so much in the world. I think about how my parents constantly make note of how my husband is with my son and how he is with me and how he is compared to how they were growing up, and what they saw as normal for men and what his own dad saw as normal for men, and how he's not going to fall into that same pattern, and my son is not going to grow up having seen that pattern. Therefore, he is going to already start the world with a completely different base than us. And so that's how we change the world. Some other notes I have are like collective numbness. So I think this is a big one. Okay, so there's so much going on right now that I think it is really important for us not to completely numb ourselves and dissociate, because it is easier in a sense to just ignore everything that's going on, or to kind of fall into, I'm only going to pay attention to what I want to pay attention to and not focus on any real life stuff because it doesn't matter, or it doesn't. And if you're on the opposite side of this, I want you to know that we are so pissed off at you. Like, as those of us who are maybe a little too plugged into the world, it is so frustrating to see the people who are not plugged in at all. And it's like, if they plugged in a little bit more, we could plug in a little bit less, because then everybody would just be equally involved in the things that matter, and we could all equally step aside. But it does get in the way. It's a strategy used by those in power to keep all of us down, because if we can keep you numb, and I mean, watch any Black Mirror episode. I mean, we basically live in one. So let's just focus on Taylor Swift and Drake beef with Kendrick, and let's just watch Love is Blind, which is, I mean, to be fair, I pay attention to all these things too, right? I love Love is Blind, and I'm waiting for the finale. Like, I'm just as guilty as anybody else of just sitting there and scrolling on my phone and not wanting to interact with the stuff that's happening in the world. And there's, again, a spectrum. There's a healthy level of disconnection that is okay and can help us not be stuck in those really negative emotions so long. But if that's all you do, now you're not connected at all with the world around you. And if there's not enough people who are fighting back to the things that are harming you, because the things that are going to harm you regardless of whether or not you're paying attention to them. And that sucks seeing all the time, where I see people post on groups and online where they're like, I can't believe my benefits are been changed this way, or I can't believe this new law happened, and this thing is like, and like you see all these things and you're like, well, why didn't you know that was coming? And it's because they weren't connected to it, because that takes emotional expression. It takes you being able to be annoyed and pissed off when something bad is happening, and it takes you caring and wanting to change it when it's something you don't want to happen. And so we can't go numb. And then we also cannot live on fire every single day, all the time. You're gonna burn out. You're gonna be in constant survival mode, where like you're never able to build a life that holds space for you. I've been there, and I'm trying so hard not to be there all the time, and have like a more base reality, and then like, okay, I have to focus on these base things, and then I can interact in this way. Part of that means that you have to feel safe, and you have to feel and understand how you're reacting to the things, and what isn't okay for you, and what's not going to be helpful for you, but what does help you and what does connect you. Because oftentimes it's the things we don't do that are helping us. Like, we know that if we just went to and connected with a bunch of people who care about the things that we care about, and did an active action, right? Like, you go and you send out flyers, or you go and you do, I can't think of things right now, but you're doing a thing that's part of the collective. It's part of you go and you feed people, or you go and you donate something, or you connect with a person, and it's real and it's physical, and you get the good emotions from it, and you feel like, I am a part of what's making the world better. And that feels so much better than scrolling on your phone and just being pissed off at everything. But one is so strong, and it can be very hard for you to get out of it, because you're not aware that that's what's making you feel that way, because you're like, I just feel like I can't do anything. It's like, maybe you can do something if you weren't constantly feeling shitty. Okay, and then touch on intergenerational trauma. Like I said before, like, a lot of these patterns come from how we were raised, and from how our parents were raised, and how their parents raised them, and it's like, it's a big pattern. And we're able to make those changes now to change the next generation, and to tackle some of these things. And part of that is being aware of it, and being able to, from there, work on what you want to change, and what should change, and what shouldn't change. Because there's a lot of good emotions that go away when we try to change things without addressing the bigger causes. And that's a big thing that happens in assimilation. A lot of people are struggling here in the US, because they come to this country and they say, oh, look, they believe differently, and I'm supposed to believe like they do. Who knows if it's universally good or bad, but because I'm trying to fit in, I'm not going to allow myself to have the experiences that I once had with my family and friends, because those are seen as bad, and I can't be that way. And so then, yeah, there's a whole lot of fucking up that goes into that too, where like you lose a lot of your sense of culture, and your sense of tradition, and your sense of connecting with your people and your family, because you're jumping straight to, this must be better, instead of like, what is what I'm experiencing, and what do I want to honor, and what do I not want to do. And so, again, everything's connected. Okay, I want to go into a biblical anchor for those who are in faith, who believe in Christ and Jesus. And I want to remind you that God had feelings, and Jesus cried. And if he can cry, and he's literally the strongest thing ever, then you're not weak for crying. In general, if you read the Psalms, read Lamentations, read Ecclesiastes, there's a lot of books in the Bible that have a lot of emotion. And they're some of my favorite ones, because I love reading parts where I'm like, oh, I feel bad for thinking a bad thing, and oh my God, I can't believe they're saying this. And so you're just like, I guess if that's in the Bible, then I can't be that bad. So it's perfectly normal as a human being to have these emotions, and that's how God made us. And he made us in his image, meaning that if he can have emotions, we can have emotions, and it's not a bad thing. And there's also a lot of stories in the Bible where God kind of helped the person be aware of the emotions, and there's a lot of memes around that too, so look those up. But just a reminder that it is human, it is good, and it is okay to have emotions, regardless of what they are. And you can always go to God to help you work through them. That's something that, as a person of faith, that's one of our tools. You can't do that if you're telling yourself there isn't an issue, right? You're not feeling or paying attention to it. And then I have a bunch of other resources that I'll add as my resource list for the month. I'll go into some of these other ones. And that's all I'm going to go into this video. I'll share resources in the caption. And throughout the month, I'm just going to share some other stuff. Like, this is one of the big topics in my book. So I'm going to be able to share some of the excerpts from the poems that I have and share some of my own experiences. I think this is going to be a month where I have a lot to say. So here's some, let me say first and foremost before I forget, I just launched, I set up my launch team for my book. What that means is, if you will please do it, I'm looking for people who will help me with launch day. And basically that means that before the launch, you're going to get access to the book, you're going to read it ahead of time, and you're going to be able to write a review, an honest review, and post it on the websites that need it, so like Amazon, so that way my book can rank and not get lost in the algorithm, which can then help a lot with it marketing itself from there on. And there are a few different things that I ask that you hopefully are willing to do for me in that, or that if you want to help me, because there's a bunch of other stuff that I'm going to need to do once the book actually comes out. And if you want to be a part of that, and I'm going to send you fun stuff, and you get to read the book early, and you get to be a part of the whole process with me. And so if you're able to do that, I would really, 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 really appreciate it. I'm going to put the link in the captions below. It's subscribepage.io/book launch sign up. And yeah, I don't know what else to say. I'm going to put the link below. Please take a look at it. And if anything, you can sign up and then after decide what you can do. Because anything, even if all you can do is like share something that I posted, that helps me. So I would really appreciate that. And then as far as some of the things that I wanted to ask of you guys, there are some donations set up for the families of the dairy workers that passed away in my county this month. There was an accident at the dairy, and 6 men died. One was actually a teenager. So one was a family friend. He was a friend of my brother's that we've known since we first moved to Greeley, and it's horrible. So if you guys have the money to donate to their causes, I think there's different, I'm going to look for several of them, because there's several of them set up, because there's 6 people, but yeah, you guys can help the families out. And then if you could continue to support some of the people in Gaza, I encourage you to follow Jim Rat in Gaza, and he posts other people's funds as well, and he shares a lot of the experiences of what's going on over there. And then through there you can find some other people, because over there people are struggling and they really need, they need basic necessities. And whether or not you're on the political end of the spectrum where you feel like certain things should happen or you believe they shouldn't, blah blah blah, these are real people experiencing real issues. And if you can just be open to seeing their reality and then connecting with what you're able to do for them, whether that means liking a post or sending money or sharing anything like that. Again, so we understand that we are not our government and that we are not the systems in place. We are just individual human beings, and all of us deserve that innate worthiness and love and support from others. And I want to do a weird little thing here. There's a lot of talk out in the world right now about the possibility of the president passing away. We don't know if that's going to happen. But there's a lot of talk about it, and there's a lot of talk about, just in general, people wishing harm, and others obviously not. Regardless of the political spectrum, I just wanted to say, like, can we pray for the way people are going to feel, whether that does happen at all in any time soon, or if it's just rumors going around. It might not matter at all by next week that I post this. I just want to say, I feel like we are having so many emotions about everything that's going on in the world. Some of us are rejoicing at the idea of a person dying. Some of us are completely grief-stricken by all the people that have died in the last few years, and that some of us are struggling with. There's just so many emotions, because some of us feel like, again, some of us are going to have really bad feelings for feeling good about bad things, and some of us are going to go out of our way to shame the fuck out of somebody who's having a good feeling over a bad thing that you see as not a good thing. And I want to say, I really just want, I hope we're all okay. Regardless of who's affected in what way, who has what feelings, whether you're having good feelings or bad feelings, or you're directly affected or not directly affected. A lot of us have been really negatively affected in very physical, real ways from this administration and just by the government over the last few years. And I think it makes a lot of sense for some people to feel happy or to even look forward to those kind of things. There's plenty of jokes out there in the world because of it, but some people are going to joke and laugh and say a lot of pretty messed up things, and whether or not you believe that's a good or a bad thing, I think allowing for everyone to grieve in the way they grieve and to have the feelings that they have is in the end a good thing. Some people are going to feel bad about certain things. Some people are going to, there's people in your life who are going to have like this shock moment because their savior has passed. Some people are really stuck in a very weird frame of mind, and some people are going to be very human and say this is a human being who deserves a human response. And some of you are like, fuck that, and I don't agree with that. And again, that's another feeling, another thought, another emotion and belief systems. And I feel like I just hope we can all just be okay, regardless if anything does or doesn't happen. Some people are going to be really upset when he comes back on screen and everything's fine. And that's crazy that we live in the world that's what's going on. And so I know that's a weird thing for me to bring up at all, but I don't know, it's just in my head. I hope everyone has a wonderful month. I will send out a newsletter at the end of this month with everything that I shared throughout this month. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you liked this video. I'm sorry it was so long, and have a great day.